Joining me now is Ambassador Alon Pincus, the former Israeli Consul General in New York and former advisor to Israel's Prime Ministers Ehud Barak and Shimon Peres. Ambassador, welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Always, Andrea. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's been a consequential week here, no question. Netanyahu's speech, a lot more defiant and aggressive, fiery than at least had been previewed last week by his closest advisors, and with the caveat that things change. And of course, there was that horrible attack by the Houthis against Tel Aviv. So it was always going to be Iran focused, but that was clearly focused. Very angry about the protesters, some of whom were violent and disgusting and anti-Semitic, and a lot who were not. They were just anti-war. There was a very broad mix on Wednesday, at least. But what was your takeaway from what you saw here this week and the way the White House handled all of this?
Well, to begin with, Andrea, it's not clear why he even went to Washington. He was not invited by Congress. He invited himself, and it started with the Republicans in the House of Representatives who wanted him to come in order to turn this into a wedge issue during the campaign, in order to highlight the divisions within the Democratic Party about Israel, in order to position themselves as the rain or shine pro-Israel, whatever it is, whatever may be, party. And Mr. Netanyahu, for the better part of the last decade, has been colluding with this and jettisoning and abdicating bipartisanship. But once he decided to come to address joint session, he did not expect, nor did you, nor did I, nor did any one of our viewers, that President Biden would then on Sunday announce that he's not seeking re-election. And that more or less upended everything. And so his speech was, there was nothing achievable. There was nothing tangible. There were no deliverables. It was a very eloquent speech, but it was, in essence, Andrea, just a series of cliches. And then he met President Biden, and I'm sure you're going to get to that, he met Vice President and presidential nominee to be Kamala Harris.
Well, at this point, Kamala Harris was laying out a policy which was identical to Joe Biden's, but with a different emphasis. Her emphasis was on the suffering, not on the military necessities. And there was some acknowledgement by people inside the administration that they took too long to get from here to there, after October 7th, which obviously the war was started by Hamas. What's your take about how Netanyahu handles this? While he was here, his national security advisor, Ben-Gvir, endorsed Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, that's not surprising.
About Trump during the speech very enthusiastically, and now he's at Netanyahu, and now he's at Mar-a-Lago, and what Netanyahu is going to hear from Trump, if he's consistent, is get this war done, but do it massively. Get it over with, which is not the message from this.
Well, let's start with Kamala Harris, Andrea. Look what Mr. Netanyahu did. He listened to what she had to say, and then came out, hiding behind his usual but now defunct alias as a senior diplomatic source, saying that what she said was very concerning and very disconcerting, and it could actually, no less, derail the hostage deal, which is complete and utter nonsense. But he was looking for a fight with her. Now, he was looking for a fight with her not because of what she said, because what she said, by the way, she said previously. And in her credit, she hit all the right notes and said all the right things, which she already said in January in a speech in Dubai. So there was nothing new here. Now, you could say that he said what he said about her, again, hiding behind a senior diplomatic source, only to grease his way to his trip to Del Boca Vista or Mar-a-Lago or whatever it's called, the gated community where he's meeting Mr. Trump. But there is a much more sinister ploy going on here, Andrea. He is trying to do to Kamala Harris what he tried to do, not without success, by the way, in 2009 to Barack Obama. He is framing her out of the gates as being anti-Israeli, supposedly putting the onus on her to prove that she's not. I don't think she's going to fall for that. But he's trying at least, and this is why he came here, as I said earlier, to become a wedge issue. Now he's going to see Mr. Trump. As you mentioned, Mr. Trump said this needs to, Israel needs to finish this. This needs to get over. The war must end. Hostages must be released. A ceasefire. And then he said, this is killing them in terms of PR. They're very bad at PR, quote unquote. Now, this is a jibe from Trump, from former President Trump. This is a jibe right between the eyes of Mr. Netanyahu, because PR is what he is. PR is what his claim to fame has always been. So I don't know about this meeting, and I know that there are a lot of grudges that Mr. Trump bears against Mr. Netanyahu, and Netanyahu is going to play the repentant sycophant. I don't know. Look, Joe Biden is the president until January 2025. So there's still 6 months. And there could very well be an Israeli election called within that period of time. So I don't know how much deliverables Mr. Netanyahu can achieve from that meeting today.
And finally, I want to talk about Martin Indyk, Ambassador Indyk, the first Jewish U.S. ambassador to Israel during the Clinton administration. He was assistant secretary. He was a Middle East negotiator for decades. He led think tanks. He was a friend. He's extraordinary, a wonderful man. You worked with him. Talk to me about Martin.
I did. I have to say there are more people in Israel, perhaps obviously in the U.S., who know him better and have worked with him more extensively. But I did work with him for long periods of time in the late 90s, and then in the early early 2000s. Well, since the mid 90s actually, with the Clinton administration. I have to tell you something. Few people actually combine both vast knowledge and profound understanding of foreign policy with a very passionate and a very deep commitment to peace, a peace that eluded all of us and him, and he was angry about it, I imagine, to his very last days, that he and others in several administrations have failed to achieve that. It was not his fault. It was not for lack of trying. I think he was a diplomat of a kind, and that it's very rare to see diplomats like him anymore.
Well, he was extraordinary. He's just passed after battling cancer. Our thoughts are with his wonderful wife, Gail Burt, and his children, and all the rest of his family. May his memory be a blessing. Alon Pinkas, thank you so much.